Hey, I'm Mitch. Welcome to my handmade South Philly row home. Come on in. I'm Mitch Wiesen. I can't decide on one title for myself ever, I hope for the rest of my life. Right now, I'm a senior graphic designer. I'm a typographer. I design typefaces. I love painting scenes around Philadelphia and the beautiful signage of the city. I am an adjunct professor at Tyler's School of Art, and I'm a little bit of a wannabe interior designer too. This house is an extension of my personality in every way possible. All of my interests are really on display in this house. Everything from my love of graphic design and typography to my love of handmade things, my love of imperfection and history and storytelling. I hope at least all comes through in pretty much every object in my home. I think the thing that I'm most proud of is how many objects I have up that people come over and have their own personal relationship to. I think about my Texas Wiener signs and how that restaurant was a neighborhood staple for so many generations before I ever got here. And so many people have their own really heartfelt relationship to that restaurant. Welcome to my dining room. I snagged these guys when I lived right across the street from Texas Wieners, which was an old corner hot dog joint. They opened up in the early 1920s. They were just about 100 years old when they actually got shut down by the health department. The neighborhood was up in arms about it. And one day I woke up to the signs coming down across the street. I remember jumping out of bed, running across the street in my pajamas, and I immediately started asking the guys, mind if I just take them with me? And they said, go for it. We were gonna take them to the dump today. So a lot of times I'll have people come over and they see the Texas Wiener signs and they go, oh, so you're the person who's got the Texas Wiener signs, and they share stories about when they would go there or when their parents would go there, sometimes even when their grandparents would go there. So it feels really, really special to be able to have pieces of real Philadelphia history in my home that I'm gonna be able to connect with people on without having ever met them before. The process of finding this apartment was definitely really different than most. At the time, I was actually living in Kentucky, where I had moved with my now ex-wife. Unfortunately, our marriage didn't really work out, but the second we decided to end our marriage, I remember I opened up my laptop and applied for 3 houses in Philly, sight unseen, just raring to go, ready to get back to the city I love. I packed up my bags, moved back to Philly 10 days later, and this house was ready for me and my air mattress and the small smattering of objects I came back with. There are just so many beautiful architectural elements to my home that the quick iPhone photos did not show when I applied for it. This beautiful door is actually one of many things that was a complete surprise to me when I finally got to move in. It's a gorgeous original door. It has this wonderful antique glass that I love, and it feels like such an important marker of a South Philly home to have a beautiful vestibule door. I think that all my antiques really affect the feel of the space because they all have this inherent quality of feeling really storied. And I think for me, I have the tendency to personify all the objects in my home. And so I really love an object where I can look at it and say, wow, this is an object that has lived a whole full life before it ever met me, and it'll probably continue living that life well after I'm gone. This wall is full of stuff that are really near and dear to my heart. The first one is this gorgeous old needlepoint by my great aunt Ida. She was definitely the family artist in the 1920s, way before I came along. And the way the story goes is that this is a needlepoint of her favorite Kandinsky painting. She saw the painting while it was on tour and she loved it so much. She went back, she sketched what it looks like, and then she went home and spent, I think, a good couple years needlepointing this piece to match the painting. I love that she put so much time and effort and energy and love into this piece that I now get to have in my house. I use this bench to display lots of stuff, from books to small objects, some of my cameras, but I would say my favorite thing on here has to be my taxidermied chipmunk, who I've named Buster, made by a friend who's an amateur taxidermist. She actually started doing this while working for USPS, and she was finding all kinds of weird dead rodents and things, and I think this was the second thing she made, this rootin' tootin' cowboy of a chipmunk. I love him so much. I consider him one of the 3 pets in the house beside my 2 cats. Everywhere you look in my house, you can see really fun examples of vintage type. This little corner of my home is one of my favorites. I have always collected barware, and my first graphic design job was actually at an agency that specialized in spirits packaging. I really went off the walls. This apple brandy was the first thing I ever made. I think my favorite thing that I have on the cart right now has to be this bottle I designed for Zignum Mezcal. And this one was really fun to design because I got to incorporate a lot of imagery that has to do with the location where it's made in Mexico and Oaxaca and the history of indigenous peoples there. I'm really lucky to have a pretty huge kitchen for living where I do in South Philly. But of course I have this huge kitchen and I'm really not much of a cook. So for me, my kitchen functions as both a kitchen and also a printmaking and painting studio. I got this great old butcher block table from a restaurant that was going out of business and they were liquidating all their stock. And then I just hung up a couple matching shelves and filled them with some of my little kitchen knickknacks. I collect salt and pepper dog shakers. So here's a really nice pair that I think might actually not be authentic vintage, but I love them anyway. They're like a play on little Staffordshire statues. This part of my kitchen is probably one of the most used areas in my house. I have my beautiful old Finken etching press on the table. You can see it says Finken on one side and Filla in the other because it was made right here in this great city. These lockers are a couple of my favorite pieces. These also came to me from Kentucky when I was living there. I store all kinds of stuff in them. They hold all my cat food. They hold my broom and my vacuum. One other element of living in South Philly that I absolutely love are these old vent fans that a lot of us have in our kitchens. This beautiful Nelson lamp. This is actually my, I think, 11th birthday present. My parents asked me what I wanted and we were in the process of finishing our basement at the time, which was sort of like my hangout art spot when I was a kid. And I knew exactly what light I wanted to be with me when I do it. And it was this beautiful old Nelson lamp. And it's come with me to countless houses over the years in multiple different states. And no matter where I live, I always find a place for it where I think it looks just great. I had absolutely no vision for this house when I moved in. I really don't do a lot of intensive planning before I buy specific pieces of furniture or choose my paint colors. I'm pretty open to whatever I happen to find, especially because so much of what's in here is thrifted and vintage shopped and secondhand and Facebook marketplace. A lot of the decisions are really spur of the moment and just kind of trusting the universe that she's gonna bring the right pieces into my life. I actually originally found this disco ball on Facebook Marketplace when I was living in Kentucky, and it was listed as a giant mosaic ball. I'm not actually sure if they knew it was a disco ball. It was covered in a really thick film from all the tobacco smoking that was happening around it, and it actually looked like a very matte green finish. So it took a lot of elbow grease to bring it back to the place that it's in now. And of course, after I brought it home, I had to find something cool to display it on. Screwing this giant thing into the ceiling wasn't really an option, and I ended up finding this amazing brass vintage birdcage stand, also on Facebook Marketplace. It was a perfect fit, and they've lived together ever since. I mainly got into antiquing and thrifting just because I realized it was the only way to get the quality I was looking for in the pieces I was buying with the money that I have. And I find that the pieces that I'm super drawn to are the ones sitting in a thrift store that might be a little dusty, might need a little refinishing, but with a little love can last the rest of my life and hopefully beyond. Like all South Philly bedrooms, mine is pretty small, but that did not stop me from fitting a king-size bed in here when I first moved in. I have my smaller dresser in here, which I love so much. I actually found this piece back in Kentucky, covered in a really dark veneer. And when I first moved back to Philly, it got a little damaged in the move. The veneer was starting to peel up, and I said, what a great time to refinish this entire piece of furniture. One thing you'll notice in my house is I love a hand. I love hands in different sizes. I love hands with different purposes. And even though my bedroom has a lot going on, I think it still feels really airy and nice. It can be hard when you rent to feel like you can really make your house your own, but when you think about how easy it is to unscrew a boob light from the ceiling and put in your own unique light fixture or put a few holes in the walls, maybe there'll be a couple bucks that I don't get out of my security deposit. To me, it always feels so worth it. It's so beneficial to us as people to be surrounded by things that feel uniquely us. The one room in this house that really needed the most work was definitely the bathroom. So let's go take a look. When I first moved into this space, this bathroom needed a ton of work. Every single thing looked like it was from a different era and a different bathroom. So the first thing I did was just replace a lot of that hardware with some super basic upgrades. I got a really nice round chrome mirror that swivels. From there, I just updated the rest of the hardware, added a little shelf for my knickknacks, and the part of this bathroom that I loved right away was my blue vintage tub. It's what's considered the original tub in the house because here in South Philly, we actually had a lot of houses without indoor plumbing, or at least without a bathroom, for a really long time. And so it wasn't until I think a city ordinance in the late 40s, early 50s that demanded that people add a bathroom to their homes. And so these 50s bathrooms, even though my house is about 100 years old, are considered the original bathroom, which is pretty cool to think about. It's why we have so many colorful bathrooms here in South Philly. If I could, I'd replace the sink and the toilet with fixtures that match my tub. But for now, as a renter, I'm pretty happy with the way that I've brought color into the space in other ways. I wasn't able to really redo the flooring, but I ended up using some fun peel and stick vinyl stickers that I think really did the trick to bring this into a whole new era of bathroom. Welcome to my itty bitty studio space. Even though it's small, I still managed to have a giant plant in here and my nice big work table. I basically do all my freelance work in here, and I have a pretty robust vintage art supply collection. I love old crayon packaging. I think it's too fun. Lots of things that I continuously return to for inspiration. It actually pulls out to offer even more workspace. So it's a really great functional piece, even though it's also so gorgeous. From there, we can come around and see my lovely day bed. This actually pulls out into a king-size bed, which is really nice when friends come to visit. And I love the bedding I was able to track down for this piece. This quilt, even though it looks handmade, it's actually vintage Crate and Barrel, which I think is too funny. And I love the way that the checkers kind of play off of this coffee table, or at least what I'm using as a coffee table. It's actually an old camp footlocker, an old trunk that kids would take to camp with them. Right now I'm just using it to store my prints, but I just love anything that had a really niche use that might not be used for that same use anymore, but that we can find new ways to use. When I moved in, the house itself was in pretty rough shape. It needed new caulking, it needed lots and lots of love in lots of different ways, and I was really ready to provide that love. I think that the house and I, and in the state that I was in when I moved back here, really were able to kind of love one another. One of the most fun things I got to do for this house was revitalize the front a bit. When I moved in, it was this terrible, dirty rubber ducky yellow. And I'm a person who loves a puke green, a pukey yellow. I love those kind of colors, but it was not that. So since my house was siding, I'm very pro painting, and I asked my landlord if she'd be down to split the cost with me of giving it a fresh paint job, and she jumped at the opportunity. And together we chose a really nice dusty blue, and I think it just looks great out front. We repainted the bottom of the house a nice terracotta color, and I think it really made the house look so special and so fresh, and it looks great next to the red brick homes around it. I think that if you're feeling a little intimidated by antique shopping, the best way to do it is just to find a friend who wants to go with you and just kind of make yourself a little map, choose an area of the city, choose an area outside of the city, see what flea markets and antique malls and vintage shops you can find in that area, and just have a little mini road trip out of it. I think that there's so much gorgeous original artwork to be had and framed, and being able to find those pieces and speak to how you found them and remember where you found them, I think it just feels really special and it makes your home unique. Thanks for hanging out with me in my home. See ya! Like this video and subscribe to HGTV Handmade for more home tours just like this.